It's now the top of the hour, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar sponsored by the Children's Safety Network. The webinar is Keeping Kids Safe in Automated Vehicles. What are key considerations? Today is January 26, 2022. My name is Cindy Rogers. I am with the Children's Safety Network, where I'm a project specialist, and I'll be your moderator for today. I just want to let you know that our program is fully funded by the Federal Human Resources and Services Administration, or HRSA, and the information and conclusions that you hear today are those of the authors and should not be construed as the official position or policy of the federal government. Before we get started with our webinar, I am going to ask my colleague, Kate Sinclair, to go over a few technical tips. Kate?
Thanks, Cindy. Welcome, everyone. If you can hear me right now, you'll notice that audio is broadcast through your computer speakers. The quality of the audio depends on the speed of your internet connection. If you're having issues with the audio, you can go ahead and dial the phone number 866-835-7973, which is in the audio notes on your left-hand side of the screen, and please mute your computer speakers. You are muted for the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions at any point for our presenters, please put them in the Q&A pod to the left of the screen. You can download today's slides at the top of the screen in the file share pod, and today's session is being recorded. You will get if you have registered, you will receive a link to the recording, which will be on CSN's website within the next week. Thank you so much, Cindy.
Thank you, Kate. Well, welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our two speakers. First is Kristy Brinker Brouwer. Kristy is a mechanical engineering professor at Kettering University with over 20 years of industry experience in safety restraints, occupant protection, and military robotics, and of course, autonomous vehicles. Kristy is a certified child passenger safety technician instructor and a leader with the Safe Kids in Automated Vehicles Alliance, also known as SCAVA. Our other presenter is Joe Colella. Joe has been in the traffic safety field for over 28 years, beginning as a child passenger safety advocate. Joe is now the Director of Child Passenger Safety for the Juvenile Products Manufacturers Association, and Joe is a member of the Safe Ride News editorial board and the Society of Automotive Engineers Child Restraint System Standard Committee. Mr. Colella is also a leader with SCAVA. I want to welcome our presenters and welcome our participants, and I'm going to now turn things over to Kristy and Joe.
Great. Thank you so much, Cindy. Appreciate it. Excited to be here. We definitely appreciate Children's Safety Network making this opportunity available to us to share, and we appreciate all of the people that are here taking time out of their day to learn with us. Because it's an exciting change that we're in the midst of right now toward automated vehicles. So it all started with Safe Kids wanting to evaluate whether autonomous vehicles had some special considerations that we needed to be aware of, that we needed to address. And so they started with a blue ribbon panel, and that's where they brought in healthcare professionals and researchers and people from the actual industry to look at whether there are special concerns. And that group came out with a report, worked out very, very well. And some of the key factors are that people doing development in the field needed to support safety standards that protect children, that there should be usability testing with families to make sure that it can work on the other end, to make sure that the designs include the needs of children and the needs of families, to conduct research on appropriate supervision, and you saw that in your poll question, and also to develop best safety practices for marketing so that people don't expect their vehicle to be able to do something that it can't. So that was one area, was a call to action for the autonomous vehicle developers. Another recommendation from the Blue Ribbon panel was to develop recommendations for the traffic safety community, for you, for us. And some of those are dealing with regulation and legislation and enforcement and policy. And Kristy will fill us in on parts of that as we move forward through this. And parts of it are education and outreach, which what we're doing right now is definitely an example of how we are following the recommendations of that Blue Ribbon panel. So that was the first phase of children in automated vehicles from Safe Kids Worldwide. Then we started adding additional resources through a second phase, and that was the Automated Vehicles Consortium. Started in 2019 and continued through 2021, and really focused on two different areas. And they're the same areas that the Blue Ribbon panel recommended, the policy, legislation, and enforcement area. And Kristy really spearheaded that. She was in charge of that during that second phase to provide guidance and best practices for ensuring policies and legislation include children. And then the second part of what we were doing is public information and education. And I kind of inherited that halfway through the consortium phase, but it was a fantastic opportunity to look at what do we know now and how do we convey that to the right people. So we developed a master plan for that, a master slide deck, and some resources that we'll walk through on our website. Just to continue that process, really we developed a mission statement and a vision statement. What we're doing in this third phase is bringing together developers and manufacturers, researchers, educators, and advocates into one place, all with a focus on ensuring the safety needs of children are actively considered and prioritized throughout research, development, and testing of automated vehicles. Our priority is to facilitate those discussions, to make sure we borrow from the best and don't duplicate efforts where unnecessary. So collaboration and action toward enhancing the safety of children as these vehicles continue to evolve. And the overall goal is to reduce injury and death in that process. So that's SCAVA, the Safe Kids and Automated Vehicles Alliance, Phase 3, and that's what we're going to talk to you about from here. But we'll start out with the poll questions that you already participated in. I'm going to turn it over to Kristy here. Go ahead, Kristy.
Yeah, welcome everyone. I want you to consider this. You are a part of the Child Safety Network, so SCAVA wants to facilitate discussion, and so we are starting that off with these 3 poll questions, which you might have saw as you logged into the webinar today. The first one, who is responsible for restraining children age 12 and under correctly in an autonomous vehicle? So if you haven't put in your answer, look at these different options right now. Lock them in, because very shortly I'm going to broadcast those results and post them so we can see how this network of individuals are voting. We want to know what your feedback is. Secondly, we're going to go over at what age can children travel alone in automated vehicles. And the third and final poll question today is, how should we ensure child supervision in driverless AVs? So this is where I want to get some feedback from you. What's your thoughts? So let's go ahead. You can keep working on questions 2 and 3, but I'm going to broadcast the results here for question number 1, who is responsible for restraining them? You can see right now that 27% of you selected the driver. This is a trick question, everyone. There is no driver in an AV, in a level 4, level 5 autonomous vehicle. So hopefully, if you select a driver, go in, select a different answer. Let's select a different answer. The majority of you have selected parent or anyone over the age of 13, 18. See how this gray area comes in. This is a lot of the questions that need to be answered before these vehicles are on the road and in major use. All right. What age can children travel alone? So at what age are you putting your child? putting your child in a driverless AV because you don't have time to run to soccer practice, the AV is coming to pick them up. At what age can they get in there and send your kid off to the soccer fields and the baseball fields? A lot of you are saying 18, right? Okay, well, I love that 13% of you say never. Like no one's even putting their grandma in there. That's fine. But we have all the way down to 6. A lot of people, a lot of us parents who have multiple kids going in multiple directions, you can see the benefit. You can see the benefit of these autonomous vehicles. I do. But we need to figure out when is it appropriate, right? And finally, on to the third one. How do we ensure supervision? Okay, let's say we do. Let's say we do put our 10-year-olds in the AV. How do we make sure they're safe? How do we make sure that they're making it from school to the baseball field? What are we going to do? You wouldn't be surprised. No one selected no supervision. So I guess we can all agree on that. But a majority of you say requiring someone 18 years of age or older to ride along. But you can see how that can be a problem if you're coming from an elementary school or somewhere else. Maybe it's maybe there's an interior camera that can live stream to your phone, right? We don't know. These are all being figured out. And this is where we need that feedback from all the different stakeholders, not just the AV manufacturers or the software developers, but parents and people in the child safety arena. We need to hear from them and make sure that everything is being designed with children in mind. All right, enough with this slide. Great answers. You all passed the test. Let's see, how can we learn more? How can we be involved? Well, the first thing that you can do is go to our website, which is safekids.org/AVs. And throughout this entire presentation, there's so much information on there and so much you can learn. Joe and I are going to guide you through where to find the information that's important to you. Also, where to find that information that maybe you can share with your schools or your local legislatures. Things like this so that we can make sure that the AVs are going to be appropriate for our children. So let's say we clicked on this website and we headed on over to safekids.org/AVs. You would end up getting a screen that looks like this, with the very front and center question, has child safety been adequately considered in the push toward automated vehicles? In SCABA, we call this our toolkit because this is where we put all of our tools and everything we need to keep kids safe. So you're going to see it at the top of the screen called the toolkit, but this is our website that we keep adding to, and it keeps evolving with more information as the technology also evolves. When you're on this homepage and you scroll down, at the bottom we have 4 major categories. Why this matters, help advocate for children, educate the safety community, and designing for child safety. These 4 categories help us organize all the information, so depending on what you need to do, you can go in here. So the first thing we're going to do is we always ask why this matters now. Why do we care? And this is because you may not know this, but AVs are currently, they are on public roads right now. There are companies who are testing them on public open roads. They're not taking your kid to soccer practice today. That's not what's happening. But they are there and they are being tested. And they're being tested all over the U.S. So now is the time to consider what the needs are for our children and how to keep them safe. We want to make sure that we're being proactive in these designs rather than a reactive design later. And so I'm going to have Joe explain more about what really qualifies us for autonomy. What does this mean? Because maybe not everybody's an expert like Joe is, but he's going to fill you in. Go ahead, Joe.
Great, thank you, Kristy. Really, what we're trying to do, and this is a great segue, Kristy, thank you, is to avoid unintended negative consequences like we've seen in the past when, just as an example, when airbags were introduced in the 80s and 90s, and eventually implemented and required in 1995 on the driver's side, there were some concerns about how those would interact with children. And what we saw over the first several years of airbags, and some of you have been around the field for a while will remember, is that children were getting hurt. Children were being killed by these required safety devices. And the reason was that the unique needs of children were not adequately considered during the process. We learned from that lesson. We don't want to repeat that lesson where children have to pay the price for these new technologies. So when we're looking at driver's assistance and autonomy, there are a lot of benefits that we can see. But this evolutionary process began in the 1950s when anti-lock braking and cruise control were first introduced. And then they've continued to advance in an accelerated way since the early 2000s as advanced safety and driver assistance and foundation systems have been implemented in vehicles. And we want to be on the cutting edge of that, like Kristy said, to make sure that we're able to provide for the safety of children. But just to give you an idea of what we mean by automated driving, it's not futuristic. It's not, for those of us who are old enough to remember the Jetsons, it's not something that we have to wait 20, 30, 40 years or a couple of centuries to get to. It's something that we're in the process of right now. It started with advanced safety features, and most of you who have late model vehicles have already experienced these. Electronic stability control, you can see the list there, blind spot detection, forward collision warnings, and lane departure warnings. And then moving into another phase of advanced driver assistance features where the vehicle is doing more of it for you, not just warning you of it, but also doing some of the processes for you with rear view video systems, so you can see more of what's going on behind your vehicle. Emergency braking in the cases of an impending crash or a pedestrian, or even rear automatic emergency braking. And from there, some vehicles today already have partially automated safety features where the vehicle is doing even more, like lane keeping assist, where the vehicle is doing that for you. Adaptive cruise control, where if I get too close to the car in front of me, the vehicle slows down by itself. Traffic jam assist. Some vehicles can even park themselves. And eventually, we will get to the point of a full automated driverless vehicle. And we want to be engaged throughout that process so we can make sure that there aren't compatibility problems and that children can be protected along the way. So really, it's a path among these levels. Level 0 that you see all the way to the left is no automation. Those are the vehicles from 30, 40, 50 years ago where you, the driver, are responsible for everything, both hands on the wheel in the image there. And then driver assistance systems where you've got some assistance from the vehicle, but it's not really doing it for you. It might be doing one thing for you. That's a level 1 vehicle. And you can see the driver in the image still has both hands on the wheel. The driver is still fully responsible. Then we get to level 2, the vehicle is doing more than one thing. It might be limited by geography, it might be limited by road conditions, but the vehicle is doing more than one thing for you. But the driver still has to be fully engaged. You see both hands on the wheel still. That's really where we are for the most part right now, is in that level 2 area for most vehicles. We're starting to see level 3 though, and level 3 is conditional automation. So in certain conditions, certain geographies, certain speeds, certain weather, the car can do more of it for you, can do actually some of the navigating and some of the driving for you. We're just starting to see that now, but you notice in the image, the driver in the image still has one hand on the wheel because the driver has to be ready to take over at any moment. As soon as the car says, it's your turn, the driver has to take over. And that could be a visual alert or an auditory alert or a haptic alert that you feel the vibration. And eventually we're going to get to high automation. We're starting to see that in commercial vehicles now in certain areas, and then full automation where I can go buy a car that drives me places. It's got a chauffeur built in, basically. So we're moving along that path, and we want to stay engaged throughout the entire process to make sure that the unique needs of children are looked out for. So how do these technologies help? Well, the bottom line is actually the middle line there on the slide. Human error contributes to 94% of serious crashes. And if we're able to reduce or eliminate human errors, these autonomous vehicles, automated vehicles, are expected to help us to reduce crashes and injuries and fatalities. That's what we're working toward, and why it's so important right now is that fewer people will be getting hurt. That's our goal, especially children is our focus. So if we look at some real numbers, the latest numbers that we have, the latest statistical year we have full analysis of, is 2019. And in 2019, about 120,000 children ages 0 to 14 visited the emergency room as a result of a motor vehicle incident. And almost 8,000 children in that same age group were hospitalized. 280 children in the age group were killed, were completely lost because of those vehicle incidents. And remember, from the previous slide, human error contributed to 94% of those crashes, and AV technology can remove or reduce human error from those crashes. So fewer crashes will mean fewer deaths, fewer emergency room visits, fewer hospitalizations, and fewer minor injuries as well. We will also see, if everything works out the way we're pushing for and the way we're engaged with, reductions in pedestrian injuries and fatalities and other non-occupant injuries as we move forward, which is it's really an exciting time. Just taking it to the financial side of things, societal costs are very high when we're talking about a child or an adult being injured or killed in a car crash. If we're looking at just children, $4 billion were spent on those emergency department visits that I mentioned earlier. Almost $5 billion on the hospitalizations, and $2.5 billion were the cost of the 280 child deaths. Because of, there are other things that are worked into those figures, not only the medical costs, but also the societal costs. The economic costs are devastating, and I can tell you from personal experience, being in a family that lost a child, that those costs for the family are much larger than just the dollars and cents. And that I'm convinced that by eliminating crash-related deaths and injuries, we can really reduce those costs and those horrible heartbreaks. So it's an urgent priority. Now, Kristy mentioned to you that they're already being tested in the real world. And this is just one example on your screen. Waymo is one company that's developed a fully self-driving vehicle under certain constraints. So rather than building a vehicle from the ground up, you may recognize that. That's a Pacifica, which is now, it used to be Chrysler, and now it is Stellantis is the brand for Pacificas. Fiat Chrysler changed their name, but you can see they've added sensors and cameras to the system and really developed a driver, an automated driver for an existing vehicle, and they're testing it in limited areas. That particular one is in Chandler, Arizona, where it's a rideshare service where I call for a rideshare service just like I would call Uber or Lyft, and I end up with one that doesn't have a driver. But still gets me from point A to point B. So that's one side, is building a driver, which Waymo is doing and doing very well. Another option is building a vehicle from the ground up. And what you see on your screen now is an example of a Zoox vehicle. And Zoox is making a bi-directional vehicle. It's a shuttle. It'll be used in a rideshare type environment to get people from pre-designated points. But it goes both backward and forward at the same speeds. It's a bi-directional vehicle. So just putting on your thinking caps here, when we say that a child should be rear-facing until, as long as possible, age 2, wherever you're saying, if the vehicle's traveling the other way, then rear-facing isn't facing the rear anymore. So that might be a consideration. We need to ensure that there's compatibility and education to accompany these vehicles as they're built from the ground up. So back to your toolkit, Kristy's gonna take you to the next level on that.
Yep, thank you, Joe. So Joe had mentioned that Waymo is testing right now in Chandler, Arizona, and we also have the Zoox, which is being tested. And maybe you want to find out, where is this in my area? You can go to our website and click down on Help Advocate for Children. Click on that button right there, and you will see a map of the United States and all of the testing locations. You can see that big red area there near Detroit. You can see Chandler, Arizona, right down there just south of Phoenix, and all the other destinations in between. Even in Ohio, I don't know if any of you are calling in from Ohio, but there is a smart, it's over 50 miles, a smart highway with all of the different infrastructure and testing right now where they can drive vehicles on the road with other just normal passenger cars in Ohio. And maybe you want to see what actually is happening in my state. What we would do is then you could click over to the next tab for the state info and look at what is going on in your state. What is the policies or the programs that are currently in use? And we have all of the current up-to-date information for every single testing location throughout the U.S. right here where you can learn more. But maybe you're more interested in what's going on with Waymo. How do I, like Joe said, pull up and request a Waymo on my phone? We can click on company info, and this is where you can look at all the different manufacturers and see what they're doing and what their public information is. Now I'm going to hand it back to Joe so we can talk more about different crashes and how we can keep kids safe.
Thanks, Kristy. Yeah, the most important thing for us to recognize here is that while these automated technologies are going to reduce crashes overall and reduce crash injuries as a result, through reducing human error, is that crashes are still going to happen, especially during the transitional period when there are some vehicles that are being driven by humans and some vehicles that are being driven by computers. The most important thing for us to recognize as advocates is that occupants are appropriately restrained because we need to protect them from these crashes. And appropriate restraint may look a little bit differently. I see Lou has asked some excellent questions, and we'll get to those at the end. You know, as we look at this, we need to make sure that the rules for appropriate restraint have not changed, and we'll talk about some situations where we might need to modify what we're teaching about appropriate restraints to make sure that these new environments are included. So just to throw an example at you, we don't know what the typical crash is going to look like once we have far more autonomous vehicles on the road. Right now, the most common crash that causes injury is a frontal collision. And the question on your screen you see there is, will frontal crashes continue to be the most common type? Is a vehicle driven by a computer system that's more attentive than any human could ever be, will that vehicle be more likely to strike something, a frontal crash, or be struck by something, which is some other crash, a rear end crash, a side impact, an oblique crash? And we need to continue to monitor that to determine what the most common crash is going to look like. But when we look at these restraint systems and appropriate restraint, we have to keep in mind that Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard number 213, which is the one that regulates car seats, is based on a frontal crash on a forward-facing vehicle seat. We're also expecting that later on this year we'll have a finalization of the side impact testing rule, the near side lateral testing rule. Right now there's no rear testing or rollover testing. So we may see in addition to the evolution of vehicles, we may see an evolution of child restraints and what they look like and what they do and how they're tested in the future as well. Another consideration is the seating possibilities of the interior of these autonomous vehicles. And there are some folks on the development side that believe it's going to be more like riding in a comfortable living room environment where the vehicle seats might not all be facing the front. They might be facing each other. And we're already starting to see more recline, more adjustment availability of seats in current vehicles, even without these automated technologies. So it's a natural progression in that direction. You know, Lou asked, I'm just going to bring it up because it's relevant here. Will there be airbags in the rear seats? And there could very well be. As a matter of fact, we are starting to see that right now. The Mercedes S580 just introduced in one of their trim lines, their executive trim line, rear seat airbags, and it's currently being looked at. How do these interact with children? How do they interact with child restraint? So as these seating possibilities change, we need to make sure that they stay compatible with child restraint. So just to go through a quick list of some of the things that we're looking at through our committees at SCAVA is the direction of the car seat in the vehicle, rear-facing or forward-facing. The direction of the vehicle seat is a consideration that relates to that. The recline of the vehicle seat, whether that affects the performance of the car seating, or right now booster seats and the recline of the vehicle seat is being studied in a laboratory environment because we may see that. The direction of vehicle travel, I mentioned to the Zoox vehicle can go forward or backward the same way, and that's going to have an impact that might change how our messaging is with proper child restraint. The presence of airbag, like Lou asked about, and like I just brought up in rear seats. Vehicle adaptations, there may be some changes to the vehicles themselves, and those sometimes can be good for child passenger safety and sometimes might create a challenge. Whether they're going to be latch locations or ISOFIX locations if you're not from the USA. And where those are going to be in these new vehicles is another consideration. And then if there are limitations of the car seat itself, either by instructions or by design for the car seat itself. So all of that is being considered by our members that include child restraint manufacturers, by the way. So we're definitely looking at that. So, you know, just when we're looking at seat configuration, should we require that the vehicle seats be front-facing when used with a child restraint? Can directional misuse be mechanically prevented so that the vehicle seat has to be facing a certain way for it to operate or for it to accept a child restraint? Could there be instruction labels on the vehicle seats or the belts, labels for on booster seats that require it to be facing the front? Mechanical blocks that stop a vehicle seat from being reconfigured when a child restraint is in use? Are there compatibility issues for lower anchors or tethering? Differences in the airbags we just talked about. Lots going on. So those are all definite considerations. And Kristy's going to take us to a new place on our website that might help us to have answers.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, so we talked about earlier, those are some great considerations, definitely things that need to be figured out. But let's think about that quiz, those poll questions that you took earlier. We even addressed those on our website. If you click on Help Advocate for Children, what that's going to do is that's going to take you to who will be responsible for children AVs. Can children travel alone? And Joe mentioned at the very top of the presentation that there was the Blue Ribbon Panel and then the consortium where everybody came together and we put in our recommendations. And the consortium's recommendation, because we have to step through this very methodically, is who will be responsible for children in AVs, is that right now all of the laws that are on the road specifically point to a driver. Well, there's no longer a driver, right? Like we took that answer right off the table for you. So what the consortium and what SCAVA is pushing for first is that all of the states amend their laws to to have an answer for this. If there's not a driver, then who? We need to get rid of these legal loopholes so they're already taken care of now before the vehicles are on the road. So that is our recommendation first. Before we even identify who that is, we need to clean up all of the laws and the regulations right now that point to a driver. Next up, we also are saying when can children travel alone? We think that this should be a state-by-state decision, that there is a clear set of qualifying conditions, but this also needs to be laid out legally for each different jurisdiction. Maybe that is a minimum age. Maybe, this has even been brought up by one of our experts, that the child has to pass some sort of test. If you're calling a rideshare vehicle and you have a phone, you would have to take a test to see whether you're responsible enough to ride in the vehicle, regardless of your age. This even applies to adults, too. And so this seems like a lot. This seems like a very big hurdle. How are we going to change policy? How are we going to change law? Well, lucky for you, we had lawyers on our team, and we set up a model law that can be used in any jurisdiction. We even had global input on this. So this isn't just set up just for the U.S. This is a set model law that can help you and your locations get these policies and laws changed just by using this model law as a starting point. Next up on our website, like I said, there's so much information that I really can't go through it all, but you're all advocates for child safety. But AV developers, vehicle manufacturers, car seat manufacturers, safety experts, safety advocates, we need to communicate together and make sure at all times child safety is number one and not an afterthought. So what we've done is we have put together a ton of educational material. If you go to Designing for Child Safety, which is over there on the right-hand side, we have tons of information on how federal regulations need to be updated, what needs to be updated, where the gaps are. Currently, we went through every single federal motor vehicle safety standard and listed out every single gap that needs to be changed. Also, how does crash reporting need to change so that we can capture all of this data and make these very advanced safe technologies even safer? So I'm going to turn it over to Joe so he can talk about what he learned from a survey of the CPS technicians.
Thanks, Kristy. Really, we're at a little bit of a loss as far as our advocate community, and that's one of the things that we're trying to change with this webinar, is that educators need education too, but right now, or at least a 2017 survey where they looked at 1,300 certified CPST, certified child passenger safety technicians, the level of knowledge on autonomous vehicles and what we're going to have to address was not really high. And a lot of people thought of it as very futuristic. So you can see on your screen what some of those results were. But really what that told us is we need to be more engaged with that community. So that's one of our goals, is to make sure that we pass on this information through curricula and update classes and conferences moving forward. So, but what do child passenger safety advocates need to know right now? It's constantly changing. It's a moving target. But some of the things that we can be certain of is that advocates are going to continue to play an important role in family education. Number one is that restraint use has to be consistent for all occupants, all children and adults, to keep people safe, because crashes are still going to happen. Car seat selection, installation, and use is still going to be a concern. Now, there might be new considerations like rear seat airbags, like the direction of the vehicle seat, the recline of the vehicle seat, that we need to incorporate the direction of travel in a bidirectional vehicle. But car seat selection, installation, and use is still going to be very important. Airbag interaction and warnings is also going to be important, and testing those airbags to make sure that there aren't issues with children or child restraints is going to be crucial. Kristy's already talked to you a lot about supervision for children under age 13 or of a certain maturity level. We're still going to play a major role in state legislation, familiarity with the basic vehicle features and the child restraint features, and largely as this develops, it's going to be really reference to the instructions. The vehicle owner's manuals are going to be different by manufacturer. Online resources should be used, and the child restraint limitations should be considered. Kristy,
Okay, yeah. So now, what if you wanted to learn more? These, you are part of you're all child safety specialists, and you said, wow, you really got me thinking about this, and I want to know more. Well, we have a whole section on educating the safety community because we believe it starts with all of us and getting the word out and making sure that kids stay safe. So if you click on the Educate for the Safety Community on our website, you are going to see tons of materials that you can download. You can even download this presentation here and more. This is only part of our presentation because they only gave us, 1 hour, and Joe and I can talk all day. And there we have information on it. We have an infographic that you can pass to your schools or your police department. We have a fact sheet. If you just want to have one sheet with just the major information, it's on there. We're on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and we even have a short, nice 3-minute video that kind of summarizes a lot of the questions that we have right here. If you wanted to show it to your family and friends, feel free. It's right there on the website. And I think that the infographic is really important. It goes over a lot of the things that a lot of our questions that we have and the urgent burning questions. So I'm going to turn it back over to Joe so he can step you through it. But remember, you can always go to the safekids.org/AVs and download it for yourself.
Great, thank you, Kristy. That really the infographic is kind of a map that takes you through some of the considerations. So when you address a school system or a policymaker or a neighbor, what are some of the questions that they might not have thought of yet that you have? You've been to the class now. So it really sums it up that we have to be considering the children on the road ahead. And I'll just walk you through it really, really quickly. So one question that it tells you to ask is, how will we ensure that restraints are compatible with vehicle designs? And that's something that we're working on right now. But the bottom line is that we need to make sure that the child restraints are compatible and that the limitations of the child restraints in autonomous vehicles are respected throughout that process, the instructions. When it comes to supervision, at what age can children ride safely alone in vehicles, and who's responsible for buckling them up? In a nutshell, it just reminds us that kids need supervision to ensure that they're safe and buckled up. They can't do it alone. It has to be an alert and aware, mature person that is responsible for that supervision. Kids count on us in emergencies, so how will we ensure that kids are supervised in case of an emergency and they need to get somewhere, need to get out of the vehicle and get into emergency services or get to emergency services? So that's another reiteration of the need for supervision, the need for maturity. And kids also need protection in and around parked cars. So there are all other vulnerable road users. How do these commercial vehicles that are doing the last part of the delivery for a commercial service, how do they interact with child pedestrians and child pedal cyclists? Very important considerations. So the infographic just kind of gives us a clue on that. And Kristy's already talked to you about it. I'm just going to keep going, Kristy, because we're running out of time. But on our website, just to remind you, we've got presentations there. We've got webinars that are going to be posted there, a lot of useful information for you, and links to additional information sources at specific companies. And we're going to continue adding to that. We're working right now with our committees to identify priorities for future webinars, whether they're research webinars or advocacy webinars, or webinars on the state of the industry and how it responds to children. We are going to continue populating. We're just getting to a good point in the committee process to start launching some of that, and probably we'll announce some around Lifesavers time in the next couple of months. So definitely stay involved in the process, and I'll just take us through. And the way to do that is, Kristy has shown you these wonderful graphics of our website. But right here, where you see that arrow, you see the SKAV Alliance. That's SCAVA, Safe Kids in Automated Vehicles Alliance. And when you click on that, it takes you to a very simple form,
okay?
And that's where you fill in your name and your email address.
I'm about to go on camera, but I'd love to take a walk with you. Yeah, I'm just going to walk around a little bit. Okay.
I hear a little background noise, but I'll just keep going.
What?
But if you sign up there, you'll be notified when we're doing a webinar. You'll be notified when we add additional educational materials. This is a moving target. And a lot of the questions that I see that we're going to answer right now are questions that we don't necessarily know the definitive answer to yet. But as we get those answers, as we get a better feeling, we will add materials and add educational opportunities to allow you to take advantage of that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cindy to help us through some of those questions.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank both of our presenters for such an enlightening presentation. There was so much information there, and I apologize that we have actually less than an hour for all of your expertise, but I encourage everyone to go to the website. There's such fabulous information there. So we've had a number of questions already come through. I hope we can get through all of them. But if you have additional questions, participants, please go ahead and type them into the chat box, the bottom left of your screen, and we will get to them as they come in. But again, thank you, Joe and Kristy. Very enlightening, and I really appreciate all of the work of SCAVA. It's really reassuring to know that there are so many experts and such a multidisciplinary group of people who are really thinking about these important issues. And as you said, Joe, being proactive rather than being reactive. And I certainly was around during the time when airbags became standard on all vehicles, and know that, we want to avoid what happened with that. Knowing that we didn't understand that airbags weren't really compatible with child safety seats, and there were certainly some injuries and deaths that resulted from that. And then we saw all of the warnings and a lot of education that took place, and laws that required children to be in the back seat. So by all means, if we can avoid anything like that, that would be fabulous. So I have a number of questions. I'm going to throw them out there, and I think both of you can answer them, but I'll address Kristy first. Kristy, for all of our participants, maternal child health and injury prevention professionals, child safety advocates, if there's one message that you would give to those folks, what would that be to kind of distill all of this? What would that one important message be? Can you start with that, and then we'll go to Joe?
My one important message would be don't be afraid of this technology. This technology is here to help. Someone had asked, what do we, how are we going to transport special needs children? This is going to be an advantage to us. Think about all of the possibilities. And so I say don't be afraid, but be optimistically cautious, and make sure that we're doing it right from the beginning.
Great answer. Thank you. I appreciate that. Joe, do you want to add anything to that?
You know, my perspective, I agree with Kristy, of course, but I would add in follow the directions. Because that's going to let you know what the limitations are of your device. And I can tell you some of the people on this call are child passenger safety advocates that have been around for a long, long time. And it used to be that we kind of knew that a rear-facing seat was going to do this and a forward-facing seat was going to do that. And it wasn't as important to consult the instructions. Because of that, now we're seeing more variation in car seats, more variation in cars, and those instructions are going to be crucial going forward as advocates and as parents.
Great. Thank you both for that. I know that you addressed this, or this is addressed on one of the infographics, but could you just give a little more information about special considerations for children as pedestrians, bicyclists, users of micro-mobility devices like electric scooters? What's the connection between those and fully automated vehicles?
Would you like me to answer?
Okay, I'll start.
Oh, go ahead,
Joe,
Joe.
you can
go ahead.
Joe, you want to
Go
start
ahead.
first?
You know, that's something that we don't know the answers to yet, but we know that it's being worked on. And it's not only being worked on by the consumer vehicle companies, but also by the commercial vehicle companies. They want their vehicles, their systems, their cameras and sensors to recognize the presence of a child, to predict the likely motion of that child or vehicle or adult, and to respond accordingly. And so far, the case studies that they've done, the simulations they've done, the real world practice that they've done have been very, very successful. But we want to make sure that it continues because, kids are a little bit unpredictable. Kristy, anything to add to that?
I will tell you right now, there's a lot happening that a typical vehicle owner is not even aware of, such as cameras installed on vehicles that are on the road right now can distinguish live between a large dog and a small dog crossing the street live. They're already doing it. They're already in vehicles that you can purchase on the road. I watch a lot of the videos, and you can see them right now, and I don't want to name names or name drop of any companies, but they can do it. They're so much more advanced than you even think they are already. They can distinguish between children and dogs and bicyclists, motorcyclists, garbage cans, road cones if you live in Michigan. They can do it all already. We just now need to incorporate it and make sure that the software is all talking to each other.
Great. Okay, thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
Another question from one of our participants. Will an automated vehicle know if the child is in a restraint correctly? Is it that smart?
So I'll take this one since Joe got the last one. Yes, actually, and some of the EV manufacturers have told us that it's not like you're going to be lugging around your giant convertible seat and hopping into your rideshare in New York City. What it is instead is that when you request your vehicle, but I guess maybe I should leave this off with this. Everyone always envisions their own car in their garage being the autonomous vehicle, but truly probably the first autonomous vehicles that you see will be these small, lower speed shuttles, rideshare shuttles, right? So what you'll be is when you, what it will be is when you request a vehicle, you'll request a vehicle for a ride for yourself and your rear-facing 2-year-old. So a vehicle, not just any vehicle will arrive. A vehicle will arrive with a rear-facing seat installed already, and it will then tell that bi-directional vehicle it can only travel in one direction because one of the passengers is rear-facing in the seat that's already properly mounted into the vehicle. Does that answer your question? They're so smart.
I think that was a great answer, Kristy. And so we definitely have the capability, and part of what we're doing as the Alliance, Safe Kids and Automated Vehicles Alliance, is helping the manufacturers and developers talk to each other. So instead of can we do it, it becomes a voluntary industry standard until we have regulations so that they will all universally do it.
Correct, because that was one manufacturer. We now got to get them all on board to be doing the same thing.
Yep.
Can you give us a little information about how the manufacturers and developers how they have responded to ideas that have been generated from the Blue Ribbon panel?
Yeah, most of them have embraced it. As a matter of fact, Kristy and I managed a webinar type environment at PrevCon over the summer, and we had representatives from some of the top companies and some of them well-known names, and they really embrace our mission. How to prioritize that and become part of that mission is still in progress. It's still something that we're working on, they're working on, we're in conversation. Some of them have already jumped fully in. They're responding very well to it. And you know, it's not just us, there's several organizations that are trying to help this industry do the right things. And we're kind of the one that specializes in kids and families.
Great. Thank you both. Another question for both of you. Could you comment on how the COVID-19 pandemic, has that interrupted or facilitated any of the work of the panel? Have you seen any?
Well, I know that I'll answer that. I'll answer mine. I'll have Joe answer his as well. But I know for mine, it definitely caused a delay. We were working with a consortium with a global team, and our European partners were hit obviously a lot sooner before us in the U.S. And so things they didn't stop, but we wanted to make sure that we were doing things right. And so we did extend the consortium by 3 months to make sure that we had identified everything and gave all of our recommendations and documentation the adequate time it needed during the pandemic that's still happening. So it slowed us down, but it didn't stop us.
Okay, anything to add to that, Joe?
No, that was perfect.
Okay, thank you. All right. So, Joe, earlier in the presentation, you made a couple of references to certain geographies. Could you explain that a little bit, please?
Well, you know, automated vehicle designers aren't going to be able to design one set of technology that's going to work in every environment. So they're choosing which ones they're most likely to operate with. Is it the highway miles for a commercial company, so just driving on interstates? Is it a very localized area with slower speeds, like Kristy mentioned, like Waymo is using in Chandler, Arizona? So it could be geographic limitations. It could include weather limitations for when those systems are fully functional, fully able to differentiate between a small dog and a big dog, like Kristy said. But yeah, so there can be geographic limitations, at least in this current phase, for where an automated vehicle can operate.
Right. I'm afraid that that's going to have to be our last question and answer, but I do want to let everyone know that Joe and Kristy welcome you to submit any additional questions at any time to them via the email address. I think it's, you'll see it on your screen, SCAVA, S-K-A-V-A, @safekids.org. And we're going to launch into the evaluation of today's network. And as we close, I want to thank all of you, our participants, for spending this hour with us. And I really want to thank our presenters, Joe Colella and Kristy Brinker Brouwer. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise and all that you do to keep children safe. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.